China's Evergrande Group is drowning in debt equivalent to 2% of the entire Chinese GDP. That's around $340 billion. Evergrande has taken a plunge into the abyss of Chapter 15 bankruptcy. What are the implications of Evergrande's bankruptcy? Can it bounce back from its ultimate end? Keep watching as we reveal the complications of the situation, not only for Evergrande, but also for the Chinese economy. By the end of this video, you'll grasp the full magnitude of the financial earthquake that's shaking China to its core. Chapter 15 Bankruptcy. The second largest property in China, China's Evergrande Group, has gone ahead and filed for bankruptcy in New York. After the events of 2021, many experts saw this coming. What events are we talking about? Well, let's take a trip down memory lane. Back in 2021, Evergrande borrowed a huge sum of money. That's normal. Every behemoth company does that to expand their business. However, the problem here is that Evergrande defaulted on its debt repayment. And we'll get into the reasons for the default in a while, but here's what the troubles for the second largest property developer looked like. By the end of 2021, their debt had piled up to a shocking sum of 2.437 trillion yuan, which is around $340 billion. To put that into perspective, it's around 2% of China's whole GDP. And if you think that's all, you're wrong. According to the debt woes, Evergrande Group also revealed that they lost $81 billion of shareholder money in 2021 and 2022 combined. So what about their liabilities? Out of the $340 billion, $85 billion was short-term borrowing. So if we add everything up, Evergrande stands at a net loss of more than $113 billion right now. Now, if you think the effects of Evergrande's default stayed contained to the company in itself, that was not the case at all. But first, let's take a look at the kind of bankruptcy Evergrande filed for, Chapter 15 Bankruptcy Protection. That's interesting because this type of bankruptcy serves as a safety net. A massive company like Evergrande needs this as it has insolvency cases that require resolution in more than one country. Chapter 15 provides suitable mechanisms to deal with such cases. Basically, a U.S. bankruptcy court can step in to help out when a case involves not just the U.S., but different other countries as well. The whole idea behind Chapter 15 bankruptcy is to make things smoother. It encourages cooperation between the U.S. courts, the company facing bankruptcy, in this case Evergrande, and the courts from the other country, which could be China's courts in this situation. The end goal is to make sure everyone is on the same page and works together, especially in these complicated cross-border bankruptcy situations. Now, let's take a step back. Bankruptcy protection is the ultimate end stage. To figure out what brought China's second largest property developer to the brink of extinction, we need to know what happened before. Let's explore the series of events that drove this corporate giant to seek refuge in bankruptcy proceedings. Aftermath of Evergrande's default. It's no secret that China's real estate sector used to be the big growth engine for the second largest economy on the planet. That's no exaggeration. It was responsible for about 30% of the whole country's GDP, a pretty hefty chunk. But then, in 2021, Evergrande's default happened, and boy did that send shockwaves all over the place. China's property markets got hit hard. Homeowners were affected. In addition to all this, the country's financial system took a hit too. In short, it triggered a big liquidity crisis across China's real estate sector. And just like a domino effect, Evergrande's default led to other major developers like Cassia, Fantasia, and Shimao Group also defaulting on their debts. And now, even Country Garden, another huge player in the Chinese real estate game, is waving a warning flag. They're talking about taking debt management measures, and where we come from, that doesn't sound good. What it sounds like is that they might need to rearrange because they're having trouble getting enough cash. Country Garden has stated that it expects its losses in the first half of 2023 to climb as high as $7.6 billion. The worst part, it has yet to complete nearly 1 million apartments across hundreds of cities in China, according to one estimate. Considering that Evergrande's default mess didn't just stay in one place, it also dragged down home prices with it. The uncertainty spread like wildfire in the real estate sector. Can you imagine what it would have felt like for developers who were already having a tough time? If the second largest developer in the country can default, what chance do these private and small developers stand? Now they're staring at the risk of default too. Evergrande's bankruptcy, a glimpse of China's real estate market. The defaults of smaller developers after the company's meltdown in 2021 signaled the start of a slow decay of China's real estate sector. Now, this slow decay threatens to inflict damage on the country's broader economy. Evergrande's bankruptcy petition is now on the table, and it's happening over in the United States. And all of this is going on while Evergrande is battling it out with some seriously massive debt problems. What's pretty intriguing is that Evergrande isn't just throwing in the towel. They're knee-deep in negotiations with their creditors, both in Hong Kong and the British Virgin Islands. They have also made it clear that they're going full steam ahead with their plan to restructure their offshore debt. But here's the thing. The fact that Evergrande is still in the negotiation ring is showing us just how slow and rough this crash in China's real estate market is. Once upon a time, the housing sector was like the golden ticket for many Chinese folks to build their wealth, but things changed. Beijing decided to turn down the heat on the property market a few years back. What was their main idea? Well, they believe that homes should be lived in. They should not just be the tools for making money. Then, in 2020, the government introduced some policy changes. The problem of borrowing was getting out of hand, and after the policy changes, the real estate companies couldn't gather money as easily. Now, the consequences of that was it set off a chain of defaults. For years and years, the housing market ran side by side with China's rise as a global economic heavyweight. However, at one point, the exponential growth got out of hand. The risks were far greater than the rewards. Yet, people were still buying homes like there was no tomorrow. They were getting mortgages even before the paint was dry. This gave builders tons of cash to keep doing their thing. But when the market tapped the brakes, buyers were stuck with debt and no actual home to live in. The best example of this is Evergrande. They had around 720,000 apartments on the waiting list, and these places were pre-sold. What is the problem here? Well, considering that they were far from being finished by the end of 2022, Evergrande defaulted. Does Evergrande Group have a plan to bounce back? Comeback plan. Let's dive into Evergrande's potential comeback plan. By now, we know Evergrande is a real giant, and it's not just massive in size, but also in projects it undertakes. For starters, they've got 1,300 real estate projects spread across more than 280 cities. But that's the thing. They are not just about real estate. Nope, they've also got their fingers in non-real estate pies like electric vehicles, healthcare, and even theme parks. It is quite a diversified portfolio. But what's the plan to get out of property sector woes? Earlier in 2023, Evergrande unveiled this mega debt restructuring plan. And just like Evergrande, this plan is also a pretty big deal. In fact, it is actually the biggest China has ever seen. They even shook hands with their international bondholders on the terms. So what's the end goal? To ease their offshore debt pressure, get back on their feet, and tackle issues head on. Now the plan involves a 3-year hustle to get operations back to normal. But it's not going to be a walk in the park. They need a cool $36.4 billion to $43.7 billion more to pull it off. That's a lot of money. Plus, their electric vehicle unit is also hanging on by a thread, until and unless it gets a fresh dose of funding. For now, Evergrande looks like a money-sucking machine. But there is a glimmer of hope. Just recently, a company called NWTN from Dubai jumped in with a strategic investment of $500 million in Evergrande's EV group. In exchange, they grabbed about 28% ownership. So Evergrande might be down, but it's definitely not out. Final thoughts. Analysts at Nomura state that this whole property situation is nothing like they have seen before. The restructuring is shaking things up, but that's the thing. Without revamping the entire sector, there's no chance China can wiggle its way out of these problems. Because the reality is that the trouble's not just staying put. The property sector issues are translating into other parts of the economy. Keep an eye on China's banking sector. The banking sector is worth $3 trillion. Now there's this shadow bank named Zhongji Enterprise Group, which manages around $138 billion in assets. The issue? They've missed a few payments and are talking about reshuffling their debt to handle the situation. According to official numbers, the home prices took a 0.2% tumble in July 2023 as well, compared to June. And if we are to believe the private data, it is hinting even steeper drops, like a 15% nosedive in major cities like Shanghai. But it's not just the private developers feeling the squeeze. Even the big state-owned ones are getting caught up. A tally by Bloomberg shows 18 state-owned businesses already waved a red flag about losses in the first half of 2023. And just to put things into perspective, that's up from 11 last year and only 4 the year before. China's economy is caught in this whole mess while it's trying to bounce back from the COVID pandemic. Things are getting a bit tough on the confidence front for consumers, and the youth unemployment numbers are also looking a bit gloomy. So the real estate crisis isn't just contained in its little corner. It's a big puzzle piece affecting China's whole economic picture. Do you think Evergrande's restructuring plan can get China's economy out of trouble? Or do we foresee a merger? Drop down your thoughts below, and don't forget to check out our next video for more updates.